Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the documentary Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, directed by David Hinton. So this documentary is basically Martin Scorsese sharing his experience, his thoughts, his analysis of the Powell and Pressburger films. It's a little over 2 hours, but it feels like a full review of their work. I did a review of The Red Shoes a while back, which in summary I think I said it was innovative but felt very dated. Perhaps this was a little bit simplistic, and I appreciated having Scorsese explain to me why he loves the Powell and Pressburger films so much. Scorsese grew up watching Powell and Pressburger films. He watched them, of course, when they didn't look so dated. And as he grew older, him and a number of other top filmmakers have really appreciated the innovative filmmaking. So this documentary really helps us understand his appreciation of their films. And so I did really enjoy it from that perspective. It also shows plenty of clips from the main Powell and Pressburger films. So it really is an excellent introduction to the work of Powell and Pressburger. Ashamedly, I'd actually only seen The Red Shoes previously, so I decided to catch up on a few of the Powell and Pressburger classics. I watched A Canterbury Tale, A Matter of Life and Death, Black Narcissus, Tales of Hoffman, and Peeping Tom, which of course was only made by Michael Powell, and I had actually seen this before. So watching these films was much more enjoyable after seeing the documentary, and I can really see the creativity and the innovation in the filmmaking. I did think that they're probably, in their day, they were probably the equivalent of Christopher Nolan, kind of pushing film technique to the absolute limits, but also for Powell and Pressburger, an absolute celebration of glorious colour. They were definitely experimental filmmakers, but they were working in an area of very conventional, conservative cinema, so they were constrained in what they could do. Now, many of their films were made during World War II, and the government was involved in filmmaking at that point. I think you had to get government approval to make a film, and so Powell and Pressburger were encouraged or made to make propaganda films supporting the war effort. So a lot of Powell and Pressburger's films are very much a part of this kind of propaganda war effort. But within those constraints, Powell and Pressburger clearly were really creative and innovative, kind of pushing the boundaries despite the constraints. Has this experience changed my view of Powell and Pressburger films? Well, I think they made 24 films and I've only seen 5 of them now, plus Peeping Tom, the Michael Powell film. I would say that overall my Red Shoes critique more or less applies to them all, except for Peeping Tom. They do feel a bit dated, but incredibly innovative and often very exciting visually. Matter of Life and Death and Black Narcissus were just kind of thoroughly enjoyable. They were kind of classic old movies, the kind of things that would be on TV when I was a kid on a Saturday afternoon. They're definitely old-fashioned, but still very enjoyable. A Canterbury Tale is kind of curious, strange film. Somehow it doesn't quite work. You've got this quirky feature of the glue man when the film is about kind of love and loss during the war. And it's the journey of a group of people travelling to Canterbury. And it just feels really, the ending feels really rushed. There's a kind of rushed happy ending where all of the kind of sad people who are grieving loss have happy endings, but interestingly, Scorsese doesn't even mention the glue man, and I found this was a little bit strange, as this was the most standout thing in the film. One thing that I was kind of bowled over by was that Canterbury Tale has this shot upward in the sky where we get a transition from a bird flying to a warplane, and it's very similar to Kubrick's cut break in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the bone is thrown in the sky and it transitions into a spaceship. This was really exciting to see. Tales of Hoffmann is a kind of opera made as a film, and the sequence of ballet in red shoes lasted about 15 minutes, and obviously that's the most iconic part of Red Shoes, and it's like they decided they wanted to do more of this, so they made a whole film of song, music and dance. There's no talking in it. It is glorious and it's visually spectacular, but personally I was a bit bored with it as a feature film. I don't particularly enjoy watching opera on TV, but as a filmmaking exercise, just in terms of the filmmaking, it does look incredible. So it felt worth watching it, but I don't think I'll be watching that one again. So now we come to Peeping Tom. And Scorsese in the documentary takes us through what happened to Powell after he made Peeping Tom. His career was basically ended. It was seen to be in very bad taste and panned by the critics at the time. Now, I'm so impressed by this film that I've done a separate review of it. But just to say that I think it's fantastic. It shows what Michael Powell might have done if he was producing films today, free of conventions, of the conservatism, and the inevitable kind of morality of the day in which Powell and Pressburger made their films. In the documentary, Scorsese tells the story really well and takes us through the impact on Michael Powell's career. Scorsese is the right person to be telling this story because he actually had a personal connection to Michael Powell. Michael Powell came to America and kind of collaborated with Scorsese later in his life. And there's a clip of Michael Powell and Scorsese as a young man on set during the making of King of Comedy. And this was really nice to see this connection. The documentary highlights how Powell and Pressburger kind of became forgotten, and only really film students and the likes of Scorsese, De Palma, Coppola, they started to give the films a new lease of life. And now, of course, the films are treated as really important British cinema, and they do have much more iconic status. There's a lovely clip of Powell and Pressburger eventually being honoured with a BAFTA award in 1981. It's really sad that they had ended up being neglected. And despite my reservations about these films not aging well, they clearly are a major force in British filmmaking. I did have a couple of small issues with the documentary. Scorsese provides some links to his films, which in principle could be quite interesting, but they're not obvious link. It's not like he was clearly referencing a Powell and Pressburger film in the way that Kubrick must have been referencing that cut break in A Canterbury Tale. I appreciate that Powell and Pressburger clearly had a profound impact on Scorsese, but I don't think the Scorsese clips really work here. They felt out of place. Another problem is that Scorsese is clearly reading a script, and it does feel a little bit unnatural at times. This may be okay for a YouTube video, sometimes I'm using scripts, but this is a glossy produced documentary. I would love to hear him just talking off the cuff and hear his enthusiasm for these films. This definitely isn't the most entertaining documentary. There's no real creativity or innovation in the documentary making. It's basically a talking head with clips from all the Powell and Pressburger films. But I think that it's fine, very informative, and definitely made me want to watch more Powell and Pressburger films. It's good to understand more about their role in UK cinema history, and this film definitely does that. I would recommend it if you're interested in UK cinema generally, or as an introduction to the Powell and Pressburger films. If you're neither of these things, then it may be less interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.